Hello and welcome back to a new episode of the AdRace podcast. I'm Fayola Douglas and today I'm joined by Ally Owen, an inclusion activist, digital leader and founder of the award-winning social enterprise Brixton Finishing School, an accelerator that finds, trains and places underrepresented talent into roles within the media, creative and digital industries. With over 30 years of experience in media and advertising industries, Ally has amassed her early working experiences at the likes of The Guardian, Mail Online, Yahoo and Unruly. Ally is on a mission to disrupt the elite media and advertising industry so it includes all voices and gives them the opportunities to thrive. Thanks for joining me, Ally.
Thank you for that lovely introduction. It made me think, I have done quite a bit, haven't I?
Yeah. So we're going to go right back to near the start, really, and talk about your time studying at the University of Liverpool. So I know you studied like a history-related subject. Can you let us know what you were doing at university?
I was actually going to be an Egyptologist, which is the most unexpected thing when you meet me. Bear in mind, nobody in my family had gone past 15, 16 at school. For some reason, I ended up not only at university, but studying Egyptology, which is, but that, I think...
Indiana Jones kind of vibe.
Indiana Jones was massive. Big disclosure, I'm early 50s. So we got Harrison Ford at his best, though he's still fine vintage, but, really at his best. And I got really into archaeology, and I'm quite neurodiverse, so I love a specialist interest. And for me, understanding ancient cultures and how people interacted, those kind of universal human truths I was obsessed with. And also what's amazing about archaeology is nobody really knows the truth. So all you do is collect bits of evidence and you make up a compelling story, and that then becomes a version of history, which I find quite fascinating.
Do you feel like, obviously now you do something quite different from what you studied, do you feel that it gave you a good base of knowledge that you still draw on today? Are there like elements of like maybe how you were studying or putting things together or, figuring out those puzzles?
I think one of the wonderful things it does is having that, because as well as doing Egyptology, I did a lot on the ancient myths and understanding how religion developed. It gave me a really helicopter view of maybe the beliefs we have now, especially, say, traditional British beliefs, may not be the only way things could happen. Yeah, that makes sense. And also just the amazingness of, the diversity and the richness of different cultures, that were when you think about when I was growing up in the 70s, like Britishness was viewed as, the number one achievement. And actually, when you look at history, we really, some stuff happened, but a lot of stuff happened elsewhere as well, basically. Definitely in my early days in media, the ability to put together a compelling reason for people to do things, essentially tell a good story, got me a long way. And I found, weirdly, that whole kind of data stuff around history, understanding, the evidence, it's not that unlike mining a good media campaign and understanding the human insights behind it. Yeah.
How did you come to the decision to move away from Egyptology and towards media and the creative industries?
Do you know what? There wasn't any decision. There was just a financial need. I got a scholarship to do a master's at UCL. Which was amazing, but I couldn't take it because I was broke and I had at that point quite a lot of credit cards maxed out. So I had to get a job straight away, like a lot of people. And the one thing I could do was type. So I temped as a secretary. I had no plan. There was no careers advice in my school beyond, if you're attractive, air hostess. If you're not attractive, Ally, perhaps you could go into waitressing. And you're like, okay, that's not a lot. There wasn't any... It was like art, creative industries, that would be the last thing on anybody's menu when it came to my school. So, I fell into it. I was temping as a secretary. One day somebody was sick. I was sat on this little bench in a company called Office Angels. You turn up, they give you a croissant, and you just wait for another secretary to be ill. Then you do her day's work. And it was always a she before anybody back then. And I turned up and it was marketing week. And I remember I walked onto the floor And I couldn't believe there was loads of people in their 20s. I was in my 20s. It was like, and it looked like a really fun place to work. But this woman, this older woman, walked towards me, and she was in charge of everything. I'd never seen a woman in charge of everything. Her name was Annie Swift. This was my moment. She was slightly red-haired, so I over-identified, but she had this thing called a pashmina. She threw over her shoulder, then she gave out commands. And I just thought, wow, that's what I want to be. So being a little hustler, I managed to do a really good day's work, obviously, made sure I was like the most helpful, most accommodating person ever. And that meant 2 weeks later, when a job came up on Design Week, a full-time secretarial job, Annie put me forward for it out of those 8 hours she'd met me. And I got that, and that's how I got in. So in no way was I aware of the industry, had any familial connections, or even understood what, outside of the typing bit, what anybody did. So it's quite, my origin story is I fell into it.
It seems like it was kind of meant for you though, like, and also the fact that you saw her there, it was like you almost needed to see it to believe it, and it kind of seemed like a goal that was obtainable.
Honestly, the power of representation, I sort of look back to those early days, and I was completely, and it's such a typically crass media face. I was without a North Star. I had no idea what I was doing or where I was going. Nobody in my family had ever got this far up the hill before. If you're like, what are you going to do next? I don't know. Nobody's ever looked into the next valley. We don't know. I don't know. We had jobs. We don't have careers. And I think that was a big thing. And especially thinking back, and I know things are different now, but as a woman, I was born before the Equal Pay Act. There was no provision really for women to have careers. When I was 16, it was like that was the first time women could have a credit card without a male signature. So it's a very different set of normalities. But when I had that chance, one thing I'd always worked since I was 14, done every single job imaginable, I knew how to take a moment. And the big thing was, I thought PAs, and when I got that thing, I was like, oh my God, that's what I want to be. And I thought being a personal assistant was the top of the tree. And actually, a couple of months into that office, I suddenly realised people were being paid more than me. Complete shock. How dare they be paid more than me? And it turns out they were in advertising. And I thought, right. So within about another 6 weeks, I was on the advertising table. It was like, but as soon as somebody gave me it was like a treasure hunt, really. We're going back to Indiana Jones. My first the first clue was Annie being glamorous. The second clue was looking at the books and going, why have they on a bit more? And that was, I kind of was making up my own map. So I suppose I was very lucky that I'd been, brought up in a way where we don't let an opportunity slide. And you just go for it. It was one of my dad's big lessons. Just take your chance, because there aren't that many. It turns out there's actually lots of chances, but you've got to recognise the chance, haven't you, to take it.
So fast forward a little bit from this time, you then were at The Guardian and you stayed there for several years.
Yes.
So you were a strategist in magazine sales. How did you find that time, and how did you move into The Guardian? How did that happen for you?
Well, weirdly, after Marketing Week and Design Week, when I started advertising, I ended up being music rep at the Daily Mirror, which got me into kind of glossy magazines from that.
Yeah.
And when I arrived at The Guardian, it was believe it or not, back when newspapers were as big as TikTok is now. It was the golden time to be in press. There weren't a lot of choices, so this was very much the end of I'm going to say, if anybody's watched Mad Men, I don't know whether they have, it was still a bit of that gloss. So I got into it because I was very good at making money for people. And I sold ads, and actually I started on magazine sales, and then I ended up doing strategy across the whole of The Guardian's platforms. But one thing, I kind of fell into it, but that's, thinking about what I do now, I'd probably not noticed that there weren't many people from what I'm going to call normal backgrounds, not upper middle class backgrounds. Definitely from a race perspective, we are talking about a very white place and a very white industry. And I started The Guardian noticing how people were literally, they'd gone to school with a royal family. which was normal there. So yeah, I learned a lot about relationships. I learned a lot about how business works, but I also learned a lot about other people's view of people who weren't from the same background as them. I didn't like that.
Yeah. Was it helpful for you, like in terms of actually delivering for the job, not being from their background? Did it mean that you were able to talk to a different set of clients and have that relatability that they weren't able to?
I'm definitely there's mass. I mean, there's some stories where people, I'm very, I was able, my background means I can, I can talk to somebody who is a member of the royal family right down to a normal person like me. It's that whole thing. But I also think the big thing is I was much more hungry and I had much more hustle background because this was beyond my wildest dreams having a job like this. I don't think you can explain how unusual it was. But now, I mean, obviously now things are much better. But one thing I should know is it's very easy to be mediocre if you're part of majority. If you're like given a job and you're from the right background for that job, so you can tend to be less good. And actually, I think if you're from a different background and you've got there on talent and grit and results, then actually you always outperform your peers who have got there on maybe the characteristics they were born into. So even though it may be sometimes a little bit tiring having to deal with mediocre people, you're always going to win when it comes to making the most money or doing the job better, if that makes sense. But it doesn't mean the structures around you aren't going to stop you at a certain point because you're obviously not of, that class or that type of person. Though things may be improving, I think we'll probably get onto that subject, won't we?
Yeah. So after your time at The Guardian, you worked at some really big companies that everyone would have heard of: John Brown, Yahoo, Unruly Media, Mail Online. Like how was that time within your career, like moving upwards and onwards at lots of these really well-known companies?
So the big tip was I always looked at where the next skill shortage was coming. I obviously, as somebody that maybe is not just going to be given a promotion based on the fact they played golf, I would make sure that there was no reason why you wouldn't give me the job. So I learned what at the time would be called emerging technologies. So, oh my God, it's digital. What's that? Mobile, video. And actually, if you're the first in, it's like with, say, AI now. If you can say, doesn't matter if there's a lack of people in a market, then people care less about their internal bias towards, different communities. So like, if you're the only person that can do mobile, you'll get the job. The only person, so my top tip is with those, Yahoo is very much about the fact I gained a lot of digital experience. Obviously Yahoo was at the forefront of a lot of video, and then Mail Online was because I'd been at the forefront of video at Unruly. So it all kind of fell out of each other, if that makes sense. But the key thing was have what somebody else doesn't have, and that's perhaps looking at market trends. If I was going to say chat GPT, what are the future skills and traits needed in the advertising industry? Well, there's a whole raft of cloud of jobs that come up, mostly AI based. I would suggest, even if that job doesn't exist, maybe start doing some skill building blocks. So when that job does exist, you're like, well, that's mine. And then you're in. Yeah.
When you were working in these different well-known brands, these companies, was there anything that really drew you to one above another? Were you really concerned about what they had to offer you and what development you could find there, or the people that were working there? Is there any distinguishable features you have?
So I am a single parent, so I wanted to stay working at I've worked, I went back to work when my daughter was about 5 months old. It's a kind of the key thing if you're single parent is to be, you're going to have to go home at a certain point to pick the kid up because nursery will start finding you. So you're going to have to make sure that you're always a big name so you can get another job, and you're always kind of at the top of your game. So by choosing those brands and choosing those types of jobs, I was always giving myself a bit of an edge, because actually when it came to me negotiating a 4-day week, or I'm sorry, I've got to leave at 5 because the school shuts at 6.
Yeah.
Then I needed that. So I'd love to say that it was about making sure I'd always be, you know, as attractive as possible to the next employer.
Yeah, it gave you some level of security. I think a lot of people are finding that now, like there been lots of redundancies and different things happening, but by making sure that you're at the top of your game, then even if that opportunity is to start to wane, there's always going to be something else you can move on to.
Yeah, I think that's it. And I think getting those, you know, sometimes if people are a bit unsure, if you've got a couple of big names on your CV, that's enough to get you into the room. It's enough to I mean, weirdly, people tend to in the industry employ people they know through their network. So if you're, I mean, now, you know, obviously it's 10 years ago that I last worked in industry, set up Brixton. Now it's kind of like, if you've got the big four like Meta, Salesforce, you know, Google or TikTok or whatever, you'll probably swap between Microsoft, that's your kind of route. It's really weird. But once you've been rubber stamped by one of them, you're weirdly rubber stamped by all of them, if that makes sense. So you've just got to get into one, and then that's shorthand for they're enough, they're good enough, which is not necessarily fair, but once you're in, you're in.
Do you have any pivotal learnings to share from those days when you were working around those different companies?
I think the reality is these are, if you're in a big tech company, it's hard work. You know, there is really tough targets, but you're obviously paid well. My other thing is, I think really looking after yourself. I used to work like I owned the company when clearly I didn't. And sometimes I would burn out because I found it really difficult to switch off. I think it's really understanding that even if you're a top performer 1 year, things outside of your control, like market forces, may act against you. For example, at the moment, we know with all the tariffs and stuff in the States, a lot of people are changing their ad budgets. That's not about the person who's working on those accounts at those media owners. It's not their fault. They're not advertising. So, you know, you may actually lose your role through no fault of your own, but because market forces change. So probably my thing I wish I'd known earlier is, you know, this isn't your life. I treated it as if it was. I suppose because I was so, you know, a sole source of income. I was so, I wish I'd been a bit like, I wish I'd been a bit more strategic, because it looks as if I've been strategic on my CV. I've really staggered from one thing to the next, surviving. But also,
yeah, it doesn't look that way. It looks good.
No, but this is a top thing, isn't it? When, you know, was that planned? No. It literally, everything was a reaction to the thing before. Because I think the big thing is, you never know what's going to happen, but all you can do is keep yourself as future ready as possible for that happening. And I think that's probably one of the things that I have kind of weirdly had as a kind of rule, one of my 10 commandments, I don't even know, I have 10, of employment, you know, always be ready for the next thing. You may not know what it is, but always keep growing your skills, growing your contacts. So whatever happens next in the great chaos that is life, you'll be able to put yourself in a good position to win it.
And is that the advice you'd give for others who are maybe in a similar position now, like looking for their next role within that space, like just being really future focused?
Yeah, I think, you know, when I was going through these changes, the changes weren't as fast as they are now. When we look at the advent of AI, you don't necessarily need to be an expert on a particular system, but you've got to be an expert on AI thinking and architecture, prompt engineering. You know, I would be thinking about everything's going to change quickly. Certainly some of the bigger companies are going to be really slow to orientate to that change to their size. that creates a really good opportunity for people who can skill themselves up. For example, like really interesting roles at the moment are that kind of crossover between creative and strategy. So you like an AI strategist and creative, how can you like use the data and visual engagement skills to kind of actually deliver lots of content in lots of different ways. I just think the world's moving so fast. My top tip would be pick something that's got a buzzword in it. So when I used to do a lot of courses. So I taught myself AdWords, I taught myself all Google Ads, and I didn't have to, but it just made me look very, very employable. Yeah, and very kind of future focused. So I was always fresh, despite the fact that my years may be ticking by. Because we have to remember, we've got a very ageist industry as well. We like shiny, the average age I believe is 33 in industry, in agency.
Past it, I'm over the hill then as well.
Well, and not in my eyes, because I'm not ageist, because I am. But I tell you what, it's it's a protected characteristic age, and whereas when I was young, I'd be up in arms about a lot of other characteristics. I definitely thought inside my head some thoughts about people over 50 or over 40, like, oh my God, they won't get new technology. Yeah, we do, but I think it's important to think we probably have to show we do a bit more than younger people. We have to recognise that maybe there's some latent bias in people and that we need to present ourselves, especially when we're older, as still able to be, future ready. Yeah.
Do you think, though, that you might be quite unique in that way, that you seem to always like have quite a big capacity for learning? Like you always want to learn the next new thing, educate yourself, be on the cutting edge, regardless of age. I don't think that's something that like everyone does,
Do you know, I think that kind of growth mindset, obviously I'm neurodiverse, I mentioned it. I'm diagnosed ADHD, medicated, so you're getting a very calming. But underneath that, I've got a lovely bit of autism that loves a specialist interest. And if we go back to my very early days in archaeology, I am one of the most curious little creatures I've ever met. I could have thousands of specialist subjects if somebody let me have the time. I've got this thing to do, it's called a job I have to do.
Yeah.
I like nothing better than getting under, tinkering around under stuff. But also I think the reality is I had, regardless of whether I need to have any more, huge financial anxiety during my working life. It's me and my daughter, like the mortgage was on me, the childcare was on me. That's a lot. So I think maybe it's a kind of slightly weird petri dish of those characteristics. So you had this curiosity, this need to learn, but you also had this absolute anxiety around what if I'm out of date? So it's kind of driven by a need to always be the most employable. So yeah, that's interesting. I've become what my interior world and the industry's pressures have made me. But also, who's not? I mean, come on, we're in advertising, we're in human connection. If you're not interested in the millions of different ways we're connecting with people, maybe the thing is you could go into a more process-based role like project management, but certainly the strategy, the vision, the thinking, you're going to have to get excited about new stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of right for somebody who is a bit more curious, I guess.
Well, like you starting your podcast and it's like you love doing new things as well. You've got the same mindset, otherwise we wouldn't be chatting. You've created something out of a set of, there's no reason why you had to create something, but you did. You've built something because you can. And I think some of us, have the ability to get excited about building stuff and bringing people together and creating connection and, putting something out in the world. And maybe if that's not your thing, then there are different roles you can be in. That's fine, because we all need some more, I'm going to call it straight men or straight roles compared to our kind of creator roles, if that makes sense. I don't know whether I'm describing that properly, but more linear people than maybe us builders.
Yeah, it's there's like type A, type B personalities, and actually it's good to have lots of different people working together to like come up with the best result. And that's always the way. Yeah, isn't it?
What's type A and I'm sorry, so I'm going to ask you a question now. What's type A and type B?
I think so the type A are, I think they're more process driven. the person that's got the itinerary, like got the maps, like got the plan, that kind of, and then the type B are it's characterized in like these TikTok like meme videos, but like type B will turn up a bit late. They're like really chatty. All of a sudden, everything like the whole dinner's free because they've chatting and talking to people, and they just kind of like flouncing around, and everything seems to work out for them. But
Oh,
they haven't done any of the process driven stuff that the
yeah.
type A person feels needs to be done for things to work out.
But they had forgotten to pay
But
their
they all
electric
get
bill.
the same results, you know? Like, so it's not a
Yeah.
not one type is better than the other,
But
but it's just different.
yeah. That's really nice. I like that. I think I'm probably a little bit mixture of the two types because obviously I'm a
Yeah,
blend of two wolves, autism wolf and ADHD wolf, who are both really confused most of the time because they want completely different things. So depending on how tired I am, I'll go through ADHD
yeah,
and then I'll go into process
both,
Ally.
both, yeah,
Yeah, but yeah, left to my own devices, I just faff about discovering amazing stuff and chatting to people.
yeah. That sounds the best. That sounds great.
Perfect.
So when did you decide to really make a change and become a founder? So I know you founded Hoxton United and Brixton Finishing School.
Yeah.
Yeah, how did that come about?
Well, Hoxton United was a precursor to Brixton, so it was actually probably just part of the Brixton story. So I was in
Yeah,
my last big corporate job at a big media place, and I'd hit 45, which is a very important age. Two things. One, it's when ageism kicks in the industry, and two, it's when women go a bit perimenopausal and decide they've just had enough of this bullshit. Am I allowed to swear? Sorry.
yeah,
You could probably cut that out. So yeah, and my daughter hit 11, so I didn't have to pay childcare anymore. So my three insights are: one, I could take a risk; two, I was quite cross; three, I knew looking around the floor my days were numbered. And also, I think when you start reflecting, when you get to halfway through your fifth decade, which is your 40s, weirdly, you start to realise that you've done all this stuff, and actually a lot of my experiences around class or understanding much more about the question of race in our industry, or understanding about the fact that being a northerner is really exotic. There's just all these unfair again, autism means I have sadly an immense sense of justice, which makes me really awkward when it comes to injustice. And it all came about anyway. The moment that kind of coalesced all of this was Katie Hopkins, or as I like to say, the one good thing she ever did. Weirdly, the media company I was at employed her, and I was running a really big revenue line. It was FMCG, so fast moving consumer goods. It was the biggest line, and I just couldn't sit with contributing to her salary because the stuff she was writing was so far removed from. When you're younger, I was like really into activism in my teens. I was on protests, I was on the poll tax. They call it riots. Let's call it a day out. I don't know, whatever you want to call it. And to survive in the industry, obviously I had to bury a lot. I just had to, there was a lot of stuff that you just kind of took and
yeah.
buried just because
So
you
just
needed to
just
get
getting
that
on with,
money.
getting on with your job. Yeah,
And also because you needed, and I think especially when you're coming from a group, even though I'm very privileged that I'm, a white woman who is able, at the time when I was going up the ranks, there weren't a lot of women. There weren't a lot of women who weren't very upper class.
yeah,
So I had to make pacts with the devil on a daily, weekly basis. And I think maybe I suddenly woke up at 45 and thought, my God, when I was younger, there's no way I would stand by. Bizarrely, I think the help of perimenopause, I just thought, bugger it, I'm going to rewire the industry. Bear in mind, this is completely insane because I've never, this is not within my, to use a weird word, wheelhouse. So I took a payoff and I went on a little journey to make some money so I could afford to set up what at the time was going to be, I didn't know what it was going to be, but it was going to solve everything. Classic ADHD. So I set up Hoxton United to help fund me while I set up this accelerator, which was going to be Brixton. And actually, I learnt so much because if you think about it, I'd been corporate. So first of all, I scaled up a little digital ad agency. I learnt PR. I did like AdWords campaigns. I actually got, all the stuff that you need to build a brand. And then I decided, I hand drew a logo and remortgaged my house. Bear in mind, I had no savings. And I used my Amex card.
You took a real risk.
3 small remortgages. I tell you what, they don't. When you don't have any money, they don't lend you money. When I had a corporate job, people were throwing loans at me. The minute I didn't have a corporate job and I was self-employed, the interest rates on any money they give you is much higher, and you're going to get tiny amounts. But I did it, and I said, right, partly because if you know anything about ADHD, we are really good when our backs are against the wall and we're in crisis. So it's kind of like, and I just decided that's it. So I decided I was going to really go for it. So it took 2 years. I went round some of my old agency clients, and because I never underserved or been dishonest, like people like Clear Channel, which is now Bar Outdoor, McCann London, Visium, quite a number of Pretty Green, gave me some seed money, which is amazing. And I've still got the crappy the logo I drew was awful. But I was like, I want to connect amazing young people. Initially, it was just from I live on an estate in Dalston, with training that we'll do together and put them in roles in industry. And people went, that sounds like a really good idea. And I was like, yes, it is. And then I just went for it. And it was like 7 days a week for a couple of years. Just absolutely like a little juggernaut. And luckily, people believed in that idea. A small amount at the beginning. And then we kind of proof of concept after the first year, it kind of grew a little bit. And obviously we all know in 2020, the rest of the world seemed to wake up temporarily to some of the horrendous challenges we have around inclusion in, globally, but also in this country. And a lot more people piled in. Obviously some of them have piled out again. Always interesting. There you go. So that's quite a bit of, that went around the houses. I hope that probably wasn't clear enough, but I hope that was enough.
It definitely was. So I guess, how was that transition for you from being in the corporate space and I guess maybe being in more of the position of power to then going to being a founder and kind of, I guess, having to start those conversations? It feels like you had a lot of contacts, so that maybe helped, but I guess, how was it getting those doors open when I guess it's a lot easier if you're at the Mail Online and you're want to speak to an agency, they're probably oh yeah, come round tomorrow, versus when you're a founder.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I think when you're in corporate life, you're not in a position of power because you're at the beck and will of the people who own the company. Okay, so I have never felt less stressed. Obviously what I've done has been a lot. I felt much weller now I've been sailing my own ship rather than having to be rowing one where I've got no control over what direction the captain's going in or what I'm going to have for tea type thing, to use an analogy. Do you know what? I think if you've done good stuff and you've been really reliable, people are willing to give you a chance. The thing is, in the same way we go right back to when I got that 8 hours at temping, I just went all in and made sure I always delivered. Obviously, in that first 1 or 2 years, I was learning a lot, but people were kind of betting small sums of money on me, essentially, and I would always overfulfill. It didn't mean that we didn't learn lots of lessons. But I think you don't need everybody to hear your story, but if you can get in to tell 1 or 2, then that's enough. And the thing is, you do need a network. And one thing I've always managed to do, network, is, that kind of what I can see. It's like a visual thing. It's like I see it as an interior, in my head, it's an interior world. If I did X there, so and so would happen. It's weird. It's like some people can see music. I can sort of see this, how can I describe it, like the roots of a tree or something, connecting everything up, and where to apply pressure or insert inspiration, what that would potentially do. And I don't know whether that's a normal thing or whether that's just years of understanding how relationships work. But find your fans, find your supporters. You only need a couple. You've just got to do it well once, and then do it next. Then it will get a little bit bigger, and then yeah. I think it depends. Yeah, for me, I was just amazed that nobody had already done this, because to me it seems so obvious. But again,
Yeah.
not neurotypical. Turns out that's not how everybody else. To me, it was already done. I kind of went into every conversation having already built this new system, and because I 100% believed it, people just were like, yeah, all right, we'll do it. But yeah, still working on it. 10 years next year since when so 2016 I left my last corporate job. So next year,
Big celebration. Yeah.
maybe a nap for you, maybe a little nap, and a biscuit.
In those early days of Brixton Finishing School, what really fueled you on? Like, how was it going right? Like, what good things were happening that really made you think this was something that
Would
could
actually
work
happen.
and was needed as well in the industry?
Yeah, it was people leaning in. I mean, the neededness, it was really interesting. It was obvious to me that our workplaces weren't balanced from a class, race, or neurodiversity point of view. But obviously, the industry hadn't really learnt that in a lot of places, because they hadn't, now one would argue that some people are still thinking about it, though obviously it's been proved. It was my early advocates, and a lot of them are still. People did things like, for example, I remember Pretty Green hosted our first assessment evening and brought pizza. That was huge. We had like Mark, who's dean of the SEA, gave me his space. I had people mentor me, people just fulfill my cup. And initially it's very people who probably have had similar experiences of otherness and understand it. So very initially it was like people who really got what it was like not to be in that boys' club or whatever we want to call it that existed then. So that was really helpful. Also, just accepting, and I wouldn't say this is healthy, I accepted this was a 7-day-a-week job and I wasn't going to get paid much. And then I just kind of went into robot Ally mode for about 2 years. Probably not that, to be honest, that's really unhealthy. But that's what got us across the line. And then the first school we did, it worked. We had 24 young people, quite a lot, out of the ones that were looking for work, 95% of them went into jobs. And yeah, and then it was real. I know that sounds weird. When it, so imagine when you did your first podcast, and then it was real, because it's like the idea of a thing, then the thing, and once it's real, it actually starts to organically, all those contacts you've made, it starts to grow. My top tip to any founder would be just make the thing, because until you've made the thing and put it out there, like the universe can't manifest it for you. Everybody's got ideas. The difference between an idea and a success is the fact you've made it. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it just has to be, until it's out there, set it free. Then, yeah, some weird momentum will take it. Yeah. Does that make any sense? I'm kind of like, I've said a lot of words, and I do this where I'm like, have I just said words? Was there any wisdom in that? I don't know.
Yeah, a lot of wisdom. So now really focusing on the diversity is obviously a huge part of the work you do. How does it really, how did it factor into you creating and founding Brixton Finishing School? How important was that it kind of was something that you were addressing in your work?
Yeah. I mean, it was everything. For me, I was really righteously outraged by how disbalanced things were, and so there was the kind of sense of, and also the fact that at the heart of it, we know the business benefits of in making sure that all talent is included. One of my big things is you can't say we've got the best talent if you're only taking talent from, say, 17% of the population based on their physical and class things. For me, I have worked with, sorry, but I'm a bit grumpy today, a lot of mediocre people. Mediocrity, I hate. And when I've worked with mediocre people, it's made me really cross that they've had a chance when amazing people, especially on my estate, 2 lovely young people got first. They couldn't get a job. Why? Because the class, the way the system works, they're not connected. So for me, diversity, I just go normal. Let's make things normal. We're not making things diverse. Let's actually make things properly normal, because this is really weird how you're doing it at the moment, because you should definitely be representing all the best talent. Number one thing about Brixton, people say it's diversity. Actually, we're about talent. We're not about tokenism. Nobody's doing us a favour by working with us. We're here to connect you with high potential talent from communities you've traditionally neglected. And that talent with different thinking, will basically, and we know this, the more different voices, the different thinking on a team, the better results, because you don't get the dangers of groupthink, you get better work, people feel more productive, the more inclusivity that happens, people stay in their jobs longer. Even if they don't really like their jobs, they'll still stick about because it's important. And most importantly, if you are beholden to shareholders, God forbid, but that's pretty much most people are, you make more money. So I think it's really interesting, because people go, it's about diversity, and I'm like, well, sort of it is, but it's actually about talent. Do you want the best people? Right, okay, well, you're not getting the best people because you're not looking at all the best people, are you? You're only looking at a tiny amount. So I've got this thing where you can look at all the best people. Interested? Because you said you wanted the best people. And that's kind of it, really.
In your opinion, would you say that the advertising and marketing industry is diverse, or at least more than it was 10 years ago? Has it changed?
Okay, it's more than it was 10 years ago. Obviously, there's much work to be done. We're talking about, so you've got on those very junior levels, you may have some better representation of ethnicity, definitely from the kind of national location and class. We're terrible still, As we rise up, we know that disappears. And there's obviously 5 to 8 years, especially if you're sort of a person from global majority, you're likely to leave. Like 1 in 10 socially mobile people will leave. And that's normally when you're getting to management, upper management. So things have improved. Interestingly, those who have American holding companies, which are a lot of our big agencies, have had to cancel all of their work to mend the system, to make it truly about the best talent. So I think it will be interesting to see if there's a rollback. If you think about the amount of money that's disappeared in the last 2 years from, really big tech companies and other companies who were supposed to be making things equal, as in, are you good enough? Yep. Rather than, you've got a certain physical characteristic, you can have the job, which is essentially the old system. So I think I'd love to say I'm hopeful. I'm still here. Crack on. That's about it, really, isn't it?
With that pullback from America, how are you finding things currently as a founder within this space? Like, is it harder? Is it difficult to navigate? Or I guess, as you said, like the focus really is on talent as opposed to diversity. Is that helpful?
So in 2023, when people realised in the States that Trump was going to get in, we lost about 1/3 of our funding from American-held companies. And I think the big, it was the stealth death of equity and inclusion, or DEI, back then. When Trump's come in, actually, to be honest, we'd already bled a lot, because people lined up behind him. So when he came in, they were on his side. And in a way, it's disappointing. But I think if I was actually in some of those companies and I've been advocating, and I was from one of the communities that we care about in those companies, that's an even harder place to be.
Yeah,
really hard. So I am one step. It's irritating because I could do a lot more good work with the money I've lost. But at the same time, I'm not being gaslit by my own employer, am I?
yeah.
Do you know what? It is such an extreme polarisation between what's happening in the States, that view of, white supremacy, whatever we want to call it, and here, it has in a way made some people wake up. I don't need everybody on my side. I just need enough people on my side to keep going. And if you think about the talent we produce, we know that they're high potential. We know that they're essential for a company's growth because we know it's key, having different voices is key. So, if that talent only goes to companies that are aligned with our values, they're essentially a competitive advantage, yeah? And I'm not going to give a competitive advantage to companies who don't believe in the fact that all humans are essentially, why are you choosing a certain set of characteristics to be more valuable than others? That's not about how well you do your job, is it? Yeah.
And I guess as well, like, do you feel that there's been changes in the UK, like after that surge with BLM that you were talking about previously? Like, has that kind of evened out now? Are we at a stage where it feels very much like before, like pre-2020, or have we even taken a step back from how things felt before that kind of surge? Like sometimes it's like, has there been like a peak and we're now back at the equilibrium, or are we now like worse off?
I suppose my thing is, I think Naren Patel, who obviously set up MIFA, described it as DEI fatigue. Pre-2020, one could argue that some people were ignorant of the structural challenges that others faced. Post-2020, nobody's ignorant. Everybody knows that it's an unfair system. So yes, there has, have we gone back? Well, kind of it's even worse, because we now know you're deliberately, structurally creating unfairness. So a set of characteristics wins and other characteristics don't. In a way, I think that's a bit worse. Because at least beforehand you could go, oh, I didn't know. I think you can't, there's no way you can do that now. Everybody, I don't know, what do you think, casting it back?
I think that it's hard for people to accept that in making things more fair across the board, that they themselves individually might end up worse off because people think about themselves so much. And so why would you want the world to be a better place if actually that means that some's going to be poured out of your cup, even though it means that everyone we can all have the same, but they don't want that. Some people can only think about themselves being better off, and that sometimes then comes at the cost of other people being worse off than them.
Yeah, I think that's a very black and white thinking, isn't it? Where people are like, if somebody gains a cookie, I'm going to lose a cookie. The fact is there's more than enough cookies to go round.
Yeah.
And it's this illusion, this kind of us versus them. Whereas the conversation, nobody should be scared of D&I unless they're really mediocre. And to be honest, that's the only people that should be scared. But you're right, a lot of people are quite mediocre and are kind of shoring up their position, because in a world where it was truly meritocratic, I can't say the word, then things would look different. And we can see I was quite not idealistic, because I'm too old, long and too for that. But I honestly think I probably thought that people, if they wanted to fix this, it would be fixed. Yeah, but I think it suits this glacial, slow, drawing out of what should just be this is a civil human rights thing. Everybody should have the right to work, and it should be an equal right to work. But there's all these nefarious ways in which some people are prioritised above others. It could be really easy to resolve it. So I think you're correct. Yeah, but the big picture is actually, if we get the right people in roles, there's more profit and there's a lot of cookies for everybody. Nobody loses a cookie.
Yeah, I think also what's great about what Brixton Finishing School is doing is that it's getting people often into the industry when they are in their like earlier years of work. As you get older and move through different like workplaces, you then are building those connections up. It's harder to transition into like another system or into a different world of work or do something different, because you don't have those connections and that network, which that then becomes like a really high currency within this space, within marketing and advertising in particular. So I think by even those people that they're all brought together at Brixton Finishing School, they're able to network amongst their peers, and they all go off and work at these like amazing places and then have that network with each other as well. Like, I think network is so important in this, and there stops being so much mobility within the marketing advertising industry if you've not worked at the right places, and you have hit, as you said, okay, now you're 35, now you're 45, like you couldn't then come into it and work in the same way that somebody else has who's been through it their whole career.
Yeah, it is really interesting. I mean, definitely, we believe we're just about to launch an alumni community product, which weirdly is called Future Ready, because I'm all about whatever stage you're at in your career, even if you're, we've got 8 people with 8 years, 0 to 8 years tenure. So we've got a really like emerging established talent pipeline, some people going up to kind of first leadership roles. But one thing that holds everybody together is being ready for what happens next. And I'm really excited. We're going to soft launch it between Christmas, but that whole network thing, I've always described this as a kind of mafia you'd like to be part of because it's good. Yeah. That's one of the strengths, united we stand. There's, if we help each other, because obviously there's other people helping each other who may not want to help us. I'm kind of like, keep it in the family between us, then we'll sew up a whole area of the industry just for us, and that would be great. And it'd be a really good bit. It'd be the nicest bit of the industry with the most brilliant work, the most exciting brands. Who wouldn't want to be in our bit of the industry? Yeah, you don't want to be in the other bit. It'd be boring.
Yeah, the best bit. So what do you enjoy most about your work? I know you said for a lot of years you were working 7 days a week, really long hours. But yeah, what do you enjoy most?
It doesn't feel like work. So weirdly, I've got that ultimate gift where I would get up and do this if I wasn't being paid. And I have had moments of that happening. But I love seeing, so we've had a really nice couple of moments recently where people who graduated from the summer school a couple of years ago have come back to teach at the summer school or team lead student teams. And actually, I feel I'm not great with waves of emotion. I'm like, oh, what's that feeling? But there's something really wonderful in seeing people win and knowing that whatever little effort we've made, like all we're doing, they're talented. All we did was get out of their way and help the structures move out of the way. And just seeing again and again, people really thrive, rise, get the chance. There's something on a day when I've had too much admin and it's raining, I'll just go, oh, somebody's got a promotion, that's great, oh, isn't that lovely? It really, there's a lot of hope in it.
So what do you see as the biggest challenge for the industry right now? What do people need to be thinking about tackling?
I mean, reality-wise, we're at an incredible inflection with AI and the continued fragmentation of audiences. The reality is, we are, unless you represent all communities in our workspaces, not just from you're from that background, you do that background campaigns, we're just not fit for purpose if we're not including, the British, our population has many different types of people in it. And if we're all about, keeping brand loyalty essentially selling stuff, I'm really worried that this move in America could be used as an excuse to stop what is actually going to future-proof most people's businesses, which is the ability to engage multiple types of audiences, and especially when we're talking about the under 25s. How are they going to, if you look at London, I don't see how a traditional ad agency, without the help of something like Brixton, could speak to our communities. I just don't get it. The 50 young people I had on summer school were all so different, even if they share, So for me, it's like, can we stop making excuses and actually sort ourselves out? Because this should be a joyful thing. We should be making great work. People, enjoying coming to work and being future-proofing our businesses. Otherwise, clients will go elsewhere if you can't connect with audiences.
Do you have any advice for brands and agencies? In which way, how do they work with you? How do they make change within their own companies? What should they be doing?
I think the number one thing is wherever you're on the journey, it's great. You know, it doesn't matter what stage you're at, it's just the fact you want to take the next step. And also just recognising it's a full-time job, this stuff. And obviously if you're in an agency or a brand, you've already got a full-time job. So there are, you know, obviously we'd love to speak to you at Brixton. We do amazing stuff, you know, whether it's, you know, every level of talent we can help you with, but also we do amazing employee engagement programs so you can be part of the change. It's never too late to take the first step. And I also think, considering the news narrative, it's really important people do take that first step. There's never been a better time to make us, you know, to align yourself with a brand that your employees will see, yeah, my company does care about this stuff and they are actually doing something about it. Because I can't imagine what it's like to be working somewhere where your company clearly doesn't care about some of the really big challenges we're facing.
And thinking about what's next, where do you hope to be a year from now, or where do you hope Brixton Finishing School to be a year from now?
I'm always about future proofing. So I would love Brixton Finishing School to be future proofed and be just one of those things that we do, like, you know, that it's just a joy to be part of. It's a thriving community and it's something that all the industry contributes to because they understand it helps all of them. And obviously we have many partners who understand that and help us now. But in the same way you kind of pay subs for, I don't know, can't think campaign, pay subs to us and then you get access to all this amazing stuff. You know, we can sort it out for you. Also, I'm really keen to get my first CEO. So one of my little North Stars, which again, wanky media speak, is I wouldn't mind like 3 CMOs at the top 25 brands being from Brixton. That's quite a nice thing. And then I can just sit back and eat biscuits and be happy at their achievements. That would be quite good.
Lovely. So where can people find out more? Where can they find you online?
I'm on LinkedIn, so Ally Owen, spelled A-L-L-Y. There's only one of me. Obviously Brixton Finishing School and our sister charity, the Finishing School Foundation, both have websites. So please check them out. Please follow us on Instagram, again, Brixton F School. Yeah, we'd love to hear you. Thank you so much. I've loved this time.
Thank you for joining me.
Brilliant.